Can Apple still dominate the tech industry 20 years from now? At first, the answer feels obvious. Apple is one of the largest companies on earth, with an ecosystem used by billions of people, some of the most recognizable products ever made, and enough money to invest in almost any technology it wants. Looking at Apple today, it is easy to assume that its position at the top is secure. But there is one problem with that assumption. Technology has a long history of replacing giants. Over the past several decades, some of the most powerful companies in the world have appeared almost untouchable, only to be overtaken when technological shifts reshaped entire industries and reduced the value of the advantages that once protected them. IBM dominated computing from the 1960s through the 1980s, before personal computing moved technology out of corporate mainframes and into homes and everyday life. Microsoft led the PC era through Windows in the late 1990s and early 2000s until the internet shifted power towards search, and companies like Google took over. Nokia dominated the mobile phone industry in the mid 2000s, selling about 500 million phones a year at its peak, far more than Apple ever sold. Then the iPhone arrived and redefined what phones were meant to be. Many companies, including Yahoo, Kodak, and Intel, have also followed a similar fate, reinforcing the broader lesson that, in the tech industry, leadership is often temporary rather than permanent. So, will Apple follow a similar fate, or will it break the cycle? To answer that, we first have to think about what the technology industry could look like 20 years from now. The challenge is that the next era of technology may not resemble today's world at all. Artificial intelligence will almost certainly play a much larger role. AI is rapidly becoming more than just a collection of tools that answer questions or generate images. Increasingly, it is becoming an entirely new interface between humans and computers. Instead of opening apps and navigating menus, people may rely on AI systems that handle tasks directly through conversation and automation. You may eventually tell an assistant to organize your schedule, edit a video, plan travel, or complete tasks across multiple services without ever opening an application. If that happens, the companies that control AI systems may end up controlling how people interact with technology itself. This presents a challenge for Apple. Compared to some competitors, Apple entered the AI race relatively cautiously. While other companies aggressively expanded their AI ecosystems, Apple often appeared to be moving more carefully. That does not necessarily mean Apple cannot succeed, but history shows that large companies sometimes struggle when technological shifts arrive unexpectedly. IBM missed personal computing, Nokia missed smartphones. At the same time, AI may not even represent the biggest technological shift ahead. Smartphones themselves could eventually become less important. Although they dominate our lives today, they still have limitations. They can break, require constant charging, and demand attention through screens that people spend hours staring at every day. Augmented reality glasses could eventually replace many smartphone functions. Instead of looking down at a device in your hand, information could appear directly in front of you. Navigation, communication, entertainment, and digital experiences could exist within your surroundings rather than inside a rectangular screen. Apple has already explored this space, but entered a category and dominated it are very different things. Beyond augmented reality, even more disruptive technologies may emerge. Brain computer interfaces, once viewed as science fiction, are increasingly being explored by technology companies. These systems aim to create direct communication between the human brain and computers. If they eventually become practical, future computing may look very different from today's screens, keyboards, and touch interfaces. Then there is the possibility that technology and biology increasingly merge. Biotechnology, health systems, implanted devices, and personalized technologies may become major industries over the coming decades. If these shifts become central to the future, Apple could find itself entering fields where it currently has limited experience. The challenge for Apple is that technological dominance often requires timing. Apple succeeded in smartphones not simply because it built a phone, but because it recognized a shift before much of the industry understood its significance. The iPhone did not merely improve existing products, it fundamentally changed expectations. Very few companies recover after missing the beginning of a major technological transition. Some observers argue that Apple may currently face a similar risk. While the company has explored areas such as artificial intelligence and augmented reality, it does not necessarily appear to lead several of the industries that could define the next era. There is also another factor that deserves attention: leadership and innovation. Apple's rise was not built solely on engineering or financial strength. Under Steve Jobs, the company repeatedly introduced ideas that felt revolutionary. The iPod, iPhone, touch based interfaces, and mouse computing changed industries because Apple often approached technology differently from competitors. Today, critics sometimes argue that Apple feels more focused on refinement than reinvention. New products often appear as improvements to existing devices rather than dramatic leaps forward. Better cameras, faster processors, and thinner designs remain valuable, but incremental improvements are not the same as creating entirely new categories. Technology history tends to reward companies that define the next chapter rather than maintain the current one. However, still dismissing Apple would be a mistake. Apple possesses one advantage that few companies can match: enormous financial power. The company generates extraordinary revenue and has the ability to invest heavily in almost any field it chooses. If Apple decides artificial intelligence or another emerging industry becomes a priority, it can acquire companies, hire talent, and invest billions of dollars very quickly. It also possesses something equally valuable: trust. Apple spent decades building one of the strongest ecosystems in technology. Phones connect seamlessly with watches, laptops, tablets, and services. Millions of customers remain deeply invested in Apple's products and continue returning to the brand. If Apple introduces a compelling new technology, it already has a global audience waiting. However, there is an important warning hidden in history. Nokia also had loyal customers, Nokia also had trust, Nokia also had dominance, and none of that guaranteed survival. Perhaps Apple's strongest position for the future lies in chips. Modern technology increasingly depends on computing power, and Apple has already become a major player through its custom silicon strategy. Artificial intelligence, future devices, and next generation computing systems will all rely heavily on advanced chips, making this one area where Apple may already have a significant advantage. So, can Apple dominate the next 20 years? Possibly. The company has money, customers, infrastructure, and influence. Yet history suggests that remaining powerful and dominating the future are not necessarily the same thing. The greatest threat to Apple may not come from another smartphone company or even another technology giant. Instead, it may come from a technological shift that nobody fully sees coming.